Hey, everybody. I'm joined today by Alex. Alex is a writer for Direct Paynet, and we talk about all these kind of hot topics and what's going on with payment processing, e-commerce, direct response. So I invited Alex to be on the show today because we were recently talking about the economy, how things, especially in the US right now, there's a lot of talk about, the US going into a recession and the world also going through a recession and so forth. And we were thinking about different things and different topics we should write about on how to recession-proof your business. How can you navigate the waters of tariffs and fulfillment issues and conversion issues and ad costs and all this stuff? So I figured Alex is the perfect person to be on here so we can have a conversation to inform you guys of what we're seeing for our clients and what strategies are working for the businesses that are actually thriving at this point. Not everybody is going through a downturn. So Alex, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah. So let's just hop into it.
Let's go.
Funnily enough, when I met you, we were also heading into a recession. So I feel like we're coming around full circle. We're just right back at it. But it's a good point. Like, what opportunities arise, or what opportunities are businesses taking advantage of, given that we are approaching a recession?
So, I mean, just to preface what you just said, so we met, I guess, right around COVID-ish time.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of talks of a recession, but in fact, in our world, which is, online businesses, online merchants and so forth, the opposite happened. So we thought there was going to be a recession. We thought there was going to be a slowdown, but because everybody was locked at home and governments were issuing checks like they were candy, it actually worked to everybody who had an online business actually boomed during that time. Right now, we're in I feel more of a constriction, like consumer spending. People are just kind of thinking, do I need to buy this? Do I not need to buy this? So it is a little bit different, but yes, we did meet when there was a looming or a pending recession. Right. But now I think it might be the real deal now. So we'll see as the economy changes and Trump tariffs and so forth continue. We'll see how that progresses. So now just kind of getting back to your questions, opportunities and things that you can do as a business to thrive. Millionaires and wealth is created during recessions. In 2008, when we had a huge slowdown in the US, right after that period is when the most amount of millionaires emerged in the US. So, I think the same thing applies. There's always opportunity and there's things that you can do to make yourself different than everybody else. But the number one thing I think that's happening right now is creating a brand. I think gone are the days of like putting up a web page and selling products one off and so forth. I think consumers are looking to feel connected to something, to believe in the mission of whatever company. That's why we're seeing a lot of companies donating money to certain causes, because then it kind of gives them a little bit of a base.
Humanizing faster.
Exactly. Yeah. Like if you're donating money to a cause, then you almost get yourself a little audience there because you're going to get people who are noticing you there. So that's one way of branding. Social media influencers, although there's more and more of them, what happens is that we're seeing a lot of growth in these micro influencers. So, people who have 10, 20,000 followers were ignored for a long time. It was like, no, we need people who have 100,000 or 1,000,000 followers or whatever. Well, now these micro influencers are popping up everywhere. There's a ton of them. It costs very little to get them to promote your product or service. So there's a lot of like agencies and different people who are actually now seeking out these micro influencers to promote their products. And the conversion rates are through the roof because they have an audience that's very intimate, that believes in what they have to say. So it's really helping with branding and selling and so forth. So, if you do these things right, it could actually position you for quite a bit of growth. I think gone are the days of, just buying up ads on Facebook and selling products. You need to kind of build a little bit of hype, a little bit of targeted audience, get people, influencers to promote your products and so forth. So I think the opportunity lies there as the
Yeah,
market is changing.
totally. And about influencers, it's actually, I would think that it's beneficial to get the micro influencers because if, people are in and out of the spotlight easily, like there's a lot of doxing or cancel culture. So if you are spending a lot on a huge influencer and something goes wrong with their, PR, then your brand takes a hit. But if you just back these people that have 10K, if one of them falls off, then it's not really a big deal because those people, their followers aren't really equating your brand to them. They're just much more aware that these are two entities, these are two businesses.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that is that they're more easily replaceable. You know what I mean? You can get a lot
Yeah,
more
for sure.
and you can
Hmm.
kind of divert your energy. And as yeah, I've said this multiple times, but people who are relying on one medium for acquiring customers, like people who are on TikTok and they're worried
Hmm.
that TikTok is going to get banned. I mean, what are you waiting for, right? To get on Instagram, to get on Facebook, to get on X. You should never rely on an external platform, at like one external platform,
Right.
to be your only driver of business, right? Anything can change. Legislation can change. The platform can go down. It can, consumers may not favor it in a year. So you always
Hmm.
should be diversifying. So I think the micro influencer strategy is a way of diversifying because you're going to get a lot of people talking about you in various platforms. And, if one drops off, well, it's not going to have a huge kind of ripple effect to your business.
Right. And like this thing with TikTok, I'm sure a lot of businesses took a hit because if TikTok is going away, what do they do? If that's their only platform, then they have to pivot to another platform and, spend even more. They could have just diversified in the first place
Yeah.
and saved.
And if you have a brand, it's easy to go to another platform and just recreate the brand. So that's another kind of reason to be branding. So I think a lot of agencies now, like design agencies and so forth, are not just creating websites now. They're kind of conceptualizing brands that can be relayed on different platforms and used. And, if you can try to get your customers, on from different social media platforms, but then to get their contact information, email, and so forth, that really is your best bet. That's your direct line to your customers. So you want to try to collect as much data as possible on your customers so you can be able to market them directly. And if you're on TikTok and you haven't already done this, I'm scared for
Here's
you,
your
right?
cue.
So yeah, here's a cue. I mean, and I think whether you're on TikTok, Instagram, if you're on multiple platforms, obviously you're diversifying your risk and so forth. But ultimately, trying to find a way to connect directly to your customer is your best bet.
Hmm.
And if your brand is recognizable, and you send an email to recognize your brand, then they'll open it and they'll read it. They'll be more engaged, right? If they never seen your company name or your brand and you start sending emails, I don't think it's going to be very successful.
From the previous recession, the threat of the recession when we
Yeah.
met, I remember one of the things that you said would be is a recession proofing strategy is to spend more on ads, advertise. Don't try to hog your cash. Spend it instead. Do you still agree? Is that a
I
strategy?
I mean, everybody has a different different strategy for what they could do with their business, but a lot of the big stock market companies, they start restricting spending during recessions. They start cutting
Hmm.
jobs, so by them spending less money on ads, on workers, on staff, and all different projects, what that does is that there's less competition for the smaller companies to go in and buy ad space. So it's going to cost you less. You're going to get more eyes. I'm not talking, huge savings here, but if there's less competition on the ad space market, well, it just benefits you if you're an advertiser. So I completely agree. I think in times of constriction, that's when people start like holding on to things. And what that does is it gives you less competition. So you can just go out there and try to
Yeah.
advertise more and get more market share and so forth. So, obviously you need to have a nest egg. You need to make sure that you have, enough to pay your staff and all that. But I don't think it's the time to start cutting back, because already people are spending less. If you cut back on your ads, cut back on your spending, cut back on your staff, you're going to start just making less money. I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
So I want to get into like pricing strategies, because things are changing. So with tariffs looming, or active, paused, active, whatever is happening, how should businesses alter their pricing strategies? Should they increase prices indefinitely? Should they adjust based on location? Like, is now a good time to diversify what they charge Europeans versus Americans, if you're, depending on where your fulfillment is?
well, I mean, it's a huge question. I think what I'm seeing mostly is like, businesses are holding steady. The tariffs are on, off, delayed, never going to happen, will happen, or 30%, 150%. Like, we don't know.
Yeah.
So I think for me, as a business owner, I feel like I just hold steady during this time, meaning I'm not going to make a huge change, because I can't change it up and then change it down and then change it back up and then go down. Like, until I have kind of some confirmation. And I think that's why people are investing less and people are spending less money, because we don't know. Uncertainty makes people just kind of hold steady. But on your pricing, I think I would hold steady. If you do have a worldwide market, now's the time to start looking at fulfillment partners that have multiple offices, right? So like if you're manufacturing a supplement or something, there are a lot of manufacturers and fulfillment companies that have offices in Europe, offices in the US, offices in Canada and Australia. So you don't necessarily need to right away go into it. But if you have a manufacturer that just has multiple facilities, it's great, because then you could tell them, well, make me a lot of 1,000 and keep it in a warehouse in Europe. So that way, when my European customers order, you can ship from Europe and I can avoid this whole tariff thing. So in terms of exact pricing, I think price testing should just be part of the regular business, like however you do business. Like, you should always be testing your price, A/B testing price A, price B, to see how, the market reacts to a price of $50 versus 75 and so forth. I'm not a huge fan of like big discounts just because it's a recession or people are spending less. I think it's just a matter of testing the market and figuring out what works for your customers at different times.
Okay. And in terms of payment acceptance, payment methods, I am personally under the impression that buy now, pay later or payment installments are going to boom even more, because if prices go up, people don't want to see that. With buy now, pay later and installments, you could adjust your checkout page to show what it would be per, in 4 months. You pay this much in 4 months, so it looks like it's less, even though they are paying more, and with interest maybe, or not. I mean, it depends on how you set it up. But would you agree? Is that a good strategy?
Definitely, depending on what the price point is, it could make sense. It cannot make sense. Now, anecdotally, I find just like personally on the buy now, pay later, just a disaster for consumers in general. I mean, I think like Uber Eats and like Skip the Dishes and all these kind of platforms that are offering food delivery services are doing this buy now, pay later. So you eat today and you pay for it for like 4 months. That's scary for consumers in terms of like managing their credit. I actually bought a bag of flour, like this specialized flour, just to make desserts and stuff like that. And I was looking for a European brand because, I won't get into why I think European flour is better than American flour on this show, but I was looking. It was like $13 or something like that, specialized big bag of flour, and I was offered on that $13 purchase to split it over 4 payments, and I was like, did they just ask me if I want to pay $3.01 per month for the next 4 months for a bag of flour? Like, I mean, what is happening in this world? This is wild, right? But because I work in payments and I know kind of what happens around the world, in Brazil specifically, everybody has been doing this payment thing for a really long time. Like it's just a common thing that you buy stuff and it's split over 10 months, it's split over a year, it's split over 6 months, and they pay for this, and it affects their credit if they don't pay for it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a different way of a different mentality, a different way of thinking, and it seems to be obviously catching on in North America. I do feel though North America and Europe, it's a little bit different. Like in Brazil, like I said, it can affect their credit. It can have major consequences if they buy something and they don't pay it off and stuff like that. I think here it's less. It doesn't affect your credit as much, and I think people are just kind of using it as another way, as another type of credit card, which can indebt a lot more people and could have other consequences. But yeah, I mean, just kind of get back to your question. Yes, buy now, pay later is really important. I think everybody's looking for it. The thing with buy now, pay later is that it costs businesses a lot of money. Like we're talking between, 8, 9, 10%, even depending on which service you use, because it's a form of credit, right? So like the buy now, pay later companies, what they're doing is they're giving somebody credit. So if the person defaults, it's on them. You as a business get let's say you're charging $100 for a pair of pants. You say, I'll split it up, 4 payments of $25. The buy now, pay later companies like Klarna and all that, they give you your $100. They take on that risk that the customer may not pay them. So obviously that's an expensive proposition, because there are obviously, if people are splitting up like $12 payments and stuff like that, these are not people who have that much disposable income. So they take a big risk. So they do charge a hefty amount for this service. So as a business, you have to price that in. Like if you're accepting that, you're pricing that in. Another option, what you can do is you could have installment payments on credit card. So if you have a merchant account, or whatever, for you're using Stripe, or you're using a service like Direct Paynet for your merchant account, we can offer you installments, and you just say, okay, well, 4 payments of $25. Now with that, obviously, if the customer's credit card declines, or if the customer decides to cancel, it's their business to do so, and you can't prevent that as a merchant, as a business owner. So there is a little bit of risk there, but obviously the fees are way lower than the buy now, pay later. So it's I think in this market and what's happening right now in the world, funny enough, there's more and more and more and more payment modes that are coming out, and if you don't offer them, if you don't offer Google Pay, Apple Pay, installments, buy now, pay later, ACH, credit cards, you're losing market share. So you have to offer them. And, the thing that not a lot of people realize is that you don't need to have a million integrations. Like as a business owner, let's say you have a small business, you're 5, 10 people, you may not have an IT resource. You may not have somebody who's able to kind of create a checkout page and do all this stuff. It sounds like wizardry. Like, oh my God, there's like 18 different payment modes. I need APIs for this and integrations. No. If you work with, Direct Paynet, for example, like our gateway, we can plug in all these extra services. So even though we'll just get you, for example, a merchant account for Visa, MasterCard, and maybe we'll tag on some ACH there for you, if you want to work with Klarna, or if you want to work with buy now, pay later, or split it, or whatever, we can usually plug that service right into the gateway. So, you get your own account, but we'll plug it in. So that way you just have everything in one place. You can pop that into your checkout page and you're good to go. So most payment providers, it's not kind of a known thing, but most payment providers can integrate to pretty much all of these different payment modes through kind of one single payment integration. So you don't have to necessarily work with somebody like Stripe. Stripe says, oh, we're a tech company and we can accommodate all these different payment modes. Well, it's 2025. Guess what? Everybody's caught up. So, so everybody can offer these different things and these different integrations and so forth. So, unfortunately for merchants and businesses, you're going to be left out in the dust if you don't start accepting all these different payment modes and offering all these different payment types. And I think maybe about a year ago, even, or 2 years ago, you would have asked me about like split it and buy now, pay later. I would have said, for anything under like $200, I mean, come on, right? Like we're not going to do that. But
right.
my view on that's changed. I'm seeing it everywhere, and especially younger people really love this like split payment option. Uh, as a parent, as somebody, in the older age bracket, I guess I could say, um, it scares me because I think people are just getting indebted and it's like, ugh. But on a business perspective, obviously, and that's what we're talking about here. If you don't offer it, your competitor will, and then they'll get the sale. So you should offer it, and don't. My lesson in this also is don't be worried about the technical stuff. Work with a competent team, and I say this all the time because I think my company is great and we can do a lot of stuff for a lot of businesses. But like if you call us and you need to add Split It and to add Klarna and to add ACH and credit cards and all this, like it's all in one integration. So it's not that difficult. Although some companies make it sound like it's difficult, it's not. And I don't hide the fact that Stripe is maybe not the best option for a lot of online businesses, but a company like Stripe, also, if you're working with them, it's just a couple of plugins to add all these different payment modes. So, just do it. It's not going to cost you very much. And it's super easy to just plug and play.
And I was thinking then that, if they do add installments and these other options, can businesses set a limit to say like, okay, well, if the purchase is under $100, we're not going to allow Klarna. We're not going to offer installments because the rate is so much higher. Because we have to spend more, we lose on that sale. And out of 100, if it's just $100 or less than $100, you're kind of losing more than what you're gaining.
Well, I mean, that would take some tech work, though. That would be on the checkout page. It's not impossible. It's if you have a technical resource that's even a little bit capable of programming or creating a checkout page for you, most developers will be able to do this. On the gateway side of things, no. I don't know, even on Stripe or even the higher tech gateways, payment gateways, I don't think there's a way to do that. On your checkout page, though, you can have different packages, and you could just limit the different packages for the different payment modes. Like if you have something that's $50, you could say no. But that's a great idea, like paying 10% on a $50 transaction. You just got to know your margins and what works. And you may, this whole surcharge thing, it's starting to become acceptable in the US that if you pay with credit card or if you pay with different payment modes, you get charged more. Consumers are starting to get used to it. A couple of years ago, there was a lot of backlash and a lot of,
sure.
Pay more.
It depends on if they're upfront about it. Like if you're just suddenly charged, like you've said in the past, if you buy something and then check your bank statement later, and it's a totally different charge, you're probably going to dispute that because you didn't know. I'm sure it says in the fine print or underneath the charge, like, hey, we're going to, there's going to be an extra 10% here. But a lot of people don't read that and they get surprised. So I think, like you said, we're accepting it more, but businesses are also just displaying more that this is part of the fee.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to charge you.
I think in an online environment also, I would maybe switch it. I would say have your rates kind of already set up for credit cards and, let's say buy now, pay later and so forth. That's your price. And then maybe offer a discount for somebody who wants to pay, let's say ACH. Versus adding, make it more expensive, like kind of do the opposite. Like, hey, if you get 5% off if you pay by ACH today or whatever. Obviously, you can't have cash payments on an online environment, but ACH, it's starting to grow, and people are, you can do subscription payments on ACH, you can do installments and all that kind of stuff, and it costs like nothing, right? It's like, it's very nominal in terms of cost, whereas credit cards are going to charge you 3-4%. Buy now, pay laters, it depends on who you work with. Also, buy now, pay later type services, they don't accept all the businesses. Like, at Direct PayNet, we work with a lot of supplement merchants, digital content merchants, and so forth. And unfortunately for them, services like Klarna and buy now, pay later, Split It, and all that, they don't work with merchants in those categories. They just don't, because they're considered high risk. And obviously, if there's a possibility that you would have a lot of disputes, even if you have like 0.5%, that is too high for them, because they're going to be paying you, like I said earlier, they're going to be paying you the full amount and taking on the risk. So if there's a dispute between you and the customer, and whatever, it doesn't work out, then they're on the hook for that transaction. So I've seen a lot of merchants in the high risk space start accepting. They get approved, and then a month later they're closed down because they just have too many disputes or too many refunds, and these companies don't want to deal with that. So, regular kind of very plain e-commerce type businesses, it works well for. But anything in direct response, you may want to consider installments more than the buy now, pay later stuff, because it's the buy now, pay later. Not only is it expensive, of course, but also I've seen some nightmares, right? Like I've seen some businesses that add it, and within like 30, 60 days, they're shut down, and it causes a little bit of chaos. So keep in mind, like it's not just they do approve pretty much everybody, and then they do similar to what Stripe does, which is they approve everybody, and then as sales go up and stuff like that, they start looking at your business model like, oh no, we don't like that, and then they shut down. So be very careful if you're adding these types of services if you're in the high risk arena, because a lot of them just won't work for your business.
Sure. And in a recession or an economic downturn, chargeback rates are typically higher, right? So how can businesses during this time try to prevent that from happening? Like, should they gather more customer data at checkout? Should they, what should they do? Should they not offer certain payment types? Should they avoid?
That's a tough one. I mean, it's a huge topic, and I think chargeback rates are going up. I wouldn't say chargeback rates, because Visa and MasterCard have alerts programs that alert businesses that an incoming chargeback comes in, and then the business can refund it. So let's call it kind of more disputes, refunds, and chargebacks all kind of bundled in. But customer returns is what we're talking about, or customer complaints and so forth. And they are increasing because, a lot of times there's a lot of impulse buying on social media platforms, and people are like, oh, and then there's Apple Pay. So you're just like, oh, I like it. Double click, boom, you bought it. And then you're like, a week later, what the hell is this? What did I buy? I don't need this, and whatever. So there is a lot of that happening, and buyer's remorse and so forth. As you're being served up ads, it's 2:00 in the morning. You're on your phone. You seem this is a great product, and then the next day you're like, no, I don't want that. So yeah, chargeback and disputes are going up, and to avoid some of that is obviously collecting as much information as possible on your customers. So, if you can collect their phone number, email address, full mailing address, like their billing address, obviously full shipping address if you're shipping out a product, their full name, credit card, expiry date, CVV, that's, I think at a minimum at this point, you have to make sure on your checkout page you have like autofill enabled, right? So, people now have autofill on their phones, and they can just fill out things very quickly on any checkout page. So it's not adding too much of a burden. A couple of years ago, when autofill wasn't as popular, a lot of businesses were trying to make their checkout pages as short as possible, because then it ties into your conversion, right? Like if you ask for too much, or you have a multi-step process, you're going to lose people along the way. So you want to make it as short as possible, as complete as possible at this point, to increase the chances of getting it approved, and also to chargeback proof it, because the more information you have, the harder it is for the customer to come back and challenge that, because you're like, well, you give us your address, your name, you're this, you're that, you're that. So it's harder for them to dispute it. Also, I think the burden falls on businesses as well, to make the pricing very clear. I mean, still, after so many years, shopping online and so forth, I have a seasoned eye for this. Still sometimes feel like I get duped. I'm like, hey, what is this little star? I think, these practices of like hiding pricing, tricking people and subscriptions and stuff like that. Like, it's not going to work. It's like, it doesn't work. It's not a good strategy. So, you don't want to dissuade people from buying from you, but like a little checkbox with like, you're paying this today and you're subscribing to this, and that's it. Just kind of get that out of the way. Let people know what they're buying and how much they're paying for it.
I will say that at checkout, I don't really like using autofill, because A lot of the time it gets it wrong. And I don't know if it's the browser, but anyway, it's just a preference. And I'm sure other people choose not to use it either. But I have found that recently I've seen it more often at checkout when you have to fill in your address. There's like some Google Map integration. So you start typing it and you can just click the address once you see that yours is on the list that pops up
Ah,
and everything is there. That autofills after like minimal effort. Check the box that says shipping is the same as billing, and that's half the form. Like
oh,
that's
there you
half the
go.
page.
I mean, that's a
So
great
really,
tip.
there's no real excuse anymore to not collect this type of data.
Yeah. And I mean, you should have some disclosures also, like asking people if you're going to collect people's phone numbers, let them know you're not going to text them unless you get their authorization or whatever the case is. People
Hmm.
like to me, I go to Lululemon, I go buy a pair of pants. She's like, "What's your email address?" No, no, I don't want five different Lululemon emails every day now because I want to buy a pair of pants. You know what I mean? So, and then
Yeah.
I'm one of those, annoying people that I'm like, why do you need my email address? And she's like, oh, well, just for the checkout. I'm like, no, 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 no. Because that
Mm,
automatically signs me up to your email list and I have zero interest.
mm,
And then I try to unsubscribe 12 times before I stop getting those emails. So, if you're going to contact your customers via email and or phone number, text, whatever, just let them know. And if you're not, then tell them, we're just collecting this for transaction validation. We're not going to email you. We're not going to do this or whatever the case is. But it's interesting what you said about the autofill address and so forth. And I mean, again, it's about testing. You test your conversions and you test what your customers are willing to give you and so forth. It's not a hard and fast rule. It depends on different industries. But also when you're testing, you have to look at your conversion rates and then what happens 30 to 45 days later when the chargebacks come in. So if I always tell businesses this, if you're testing anything, have a Google Doc, a Google Sheet or an Excel spreadsheet or whatever, and just write what changes you're making. So then when you're doing something 45 days later, if you see your chargebacks rates go up, you can go back to that sheet and be like, what did I change? Did I add something? Did I change something in my field?
hmm.
And then you'll be able to see, oh, well, I took off phone number validation or whatever the case is, right? So it's important to test these things. And I think it's also important to test maybe various versions of checkout pages on mobile, on desktop, various browsers, various mobile
Sure.
like if you have Android phone, Apple phone, older Android, newer Android, iOS 5, iOS 15, whatever the case is, like you have to try all these different versions because, and it depends on your audience. Like I see, some of the products that are targeted to older demographic. When I look at the checkout page on mobile, I'm like, this is so small. Like that
Right.
little X is like, font size 4. Like whose finger is going to be able to, close that and whatever. And you're going to, then they're going to get
Yeah.
redirected to some ad, lose their attention and so forth. So, you know,
Mm,
the mobile checkout pages is something that I see as a huge missed opportunity on a lot of different businesses. Like I see
hmm.
this all the time. I think I did an episode recently just
You did. Yeah.
giving people tips on mobile checkout pages because the average conversion of a mobile checkout page is less than half than a desktop. And people are like, oh, well, that's because, people on desktop are more concentrated and so forth. Not really. I think a lot of people are just at night in the evening shopping and stuff like that. They're on their mobiles.
Yeah.
And it's becoming more of a thing. Like, I mean, I think I'm on my mobile way more in the evening than I am. Like, obviously, when I'm working, I need to be on my desktop, but like, I'm not going to take my desktop just to navigate the internet or
No,
the
no.
things or whatever.
I would say that mobile should be treated more like direct response because you only have this much attention as opposed to this much attention, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So
I
when I'm
agree.
scrolling, I just want to say, yes, I'm going to buy this right now. Maybe I'll regret it later, but like get me to buy it now and just give me the one tap option that says buy it now with Apple Pay because I have an iPhone.
I was just going to say Apple Pay. So, I mean, when I'm shopping on, it's funny, when I'm shopping on my mobile, I pretty much pay for everything on Apple Pay because it's much
Me too.
faster. So again, as we were talking about payment modes, you could, for example, on a mobile checkout page, have Apple Pay as an option, but then not have it on because it is more expensive for a business to offer Apple Pay than to just offer credit
Hmm.
card. And all Apple Pay does is store people's credit cards. So it actually is
Yeah.
just a credit card payment. It's just like a kind of like a PayPal type thing.
A
PayPal, like
wallet. Yeah.
PayPal really missed the boat on that. But anyway, uh, so offering Apple Pay on mobile and then maybe on desktop, not offering it because on my desktop I can have my credit card numbers very easily and all that.
Yeah.
You could
And
save a
Apple
couple
Pay
of bucks.
requires your phone anyway. So if I'm on one device, I don't want to go and grab another device. Like
Yeah,
you have to read who is doing this and how much effort they have to put into to make the payment.
yeah.
Less effort is better.
Yeah, I mean, less effort, knowing your audience, knowing, how to save costs as a business. Like, you don't want to use Apple Pay everywhere. I know as a business owner, you're like, oh man, Apple Pay is way more expensive. I don't want to use it. Well, use it just on mobile. So
Hmm.
at least, let's say if 60% is on mobile, at least 40% that's on desktop is not off being offered that option, and then test it out. But in general, try to accept credit cards on your desktop pages because that's going to be way cheaper for you as a business. You can also offer ACH. And then on mobile, you may want to have, Apple Pay and Google Pay a little bit more obvious on the checkout because it's easier, and I'm in payments and I offer people merchant accounts and stuff like that. It's kind of opposite of what I should be saying, but the truth is the truth. Like I even use Apple Pay when I'm on mobile because it's easier. It's like I have, biometrics, double click, boom, it sees my face. I'm done. I don't need to do anything.
Yeah.
So it's all this kind of circling around back to the economy and so forth is what we're doing is we're trying to meet the customer where he's at or where she's at. Like that's basically what's happening is we're trying to make it as easy as possible, but being as clear as possible. So people still have money to spend. People still want to buy stuff. They're just being more selective. So the easier you make it for your customer, the more sales you're going to get and the more sales your competitors are going to lose if they don't do the same.
Totally agree. Right. I think all of these are really great tips on how to recession proof your business and stay afloat or rise above it,
Yeah,
not just stay afloat.
not just stay afloat. Opportunities, like I said, exist everywhere. And I think if you capitalize on this while there's a downturn in the economy, when people are constricting, you can actually rise above it. So, check out my episodes on the checkout page, mobile checkout page, conversions, and so forth. There's so much information that's available for free out there that you can just quick little things like all the stuff that I'm suggesting in this episode and other episodes. It's like if you spend half a day, you'll figure all this out and be able to implement it. So, there's no excuse. I think saying that, there's a recession and people are spending less money is not very representative of being an entrepreneur. You should be able to change with the times. So thanks, Alex, for all these awesome questions. I think this was a very useful discussion, and we'll have another one. We'll have another follow-up soon.
Yeah, we will. I'm excited to see what the people say, the comments.
Yeah, same here. I mean, guys, if you have anything to say or any questions about mobile checkout pages or letting us know how your business is doing during, this economic downturn or like the tariff threats and stuff like that, drop them down below. We'll do another episode. We'll do some more discussions on this. I think there's a lot of stuff that we can cover.